Fellow members of APIL and fellow practitioners, it is with a deep sense of humility that I stand before you here today. As somebody who enthusiastically attended the very earliest meetings of this association about 26 years ago, and I dare say before many of you were in legal practice, I never ever dreamt that I would one day be standing here as president. What's more, in that time, I've seen many inspiring figures and leaders in the world of claimant personal injury practice stand in this position and make speeches from this platform, and I'm filled with a great sense of challenge to follow in their footsteps, if also something of a feeling of foreboding. What it's also shown me is that each and every one of you here today has the potential to contribute to make things better for injured people, a theme to which I'll return later. My own background in representing injured people goes back, I can hardly believe, nearly 35 years. At that time, I came out of university clutching a shiny new law degree and went into what was then called articles of clerkship in a high-profile commercial law firm. Almost by accident, forgive the pun, I fell into personal injury work, inspired by a larger-than-life, passionate lawyer who was something of a one-off in that firm, and I knew immediately that rather than spending my time looking at leases, franchises, planning applications and the like, this was the area of law in which I wanted to practice, dealing with real people, real lives, and trying to make a difference to them. There have been so many changes since then, and both high and low watermarks. Look at what has happened over this period. Developments such as provisional damages, structured settlements and then periodical payments, awards for loss of earning capacity and congenial employment, case management and rehabilitation, Part 36 for both claimants and defendants, Ogden tables, portals, and much, much more. Even at this conference, we're going to hear about some recent fantastic outcomes in cases in the Supreme Court that are highly beneficial to the individual claimants in those cases and to injured people generally. We've lived through Lord Woolf, the removal of legal aid and the introduction of conditional fee agreements, recoverable additional liabilities, Lord Justice Jackson, qualified one-way cost shifting and the removal of the recoverability of additional liabilities, and the introduction of damages-based agreements, although not in a workable form. So a lot has happened over all those years, but enough with the history lesson. Standing here today, I want to talk to you about the immediate challenges that we all face, what you can do as individuals and as APIL members on behalf of injured people so that you can continue representing them in their time of need, and how together we can make APIL even more meaningful in continuing to protect the rights of our injured clients. Because today, even allowing for what has gone before, we stand on the verge of the greatest of the challenges that we, and more importantly, innocent injured people, have faced to their rights and entitlements for many a long day. Those rights have been around for a very, very long time. Students of history or theology will find personal injury law enshrined in Exodus chapter 21, verses 18 to 27, and rooted in Roman law. In Anglo-Saxon times, the law of Ethelbert, King of Kent in the 7th century recognised the entitlement to compensation for bodily injury, for example with the payment of 12 Saxon shillings for the loss of a thumb, the equivalent of about £1,200 today. That was well before somebody found a snail in a bottle in 1932. But this government doesn't seem too concerned with history, or for that matter, the rights of injured people. In what direction is the moral compass of this government pointing in the way in which it treats people who have suffered a physical or psychological disadvantage through no fault of their own? You have to ask whether a soft tissue injury to somebody who was previously perfectly fit that prevents, for example, a young mother from picking up and holding her baby and looking after it, or an avid competitive squash player from playing squash for several months, or an elderly person from getting out and about as they used to do before they completely lost their confidence should be denied compensation, because that is what this government proposes. The right to bodily integrity is different from a train being delayed or being missold a protection policy. It should be inalienable and should be prioritised in a society that prides itself as one that has set examples to others throughout history. The time has come to fight back. The sweeping, we must get rid of fraud approach is an insult to thousands of genuinely injured people who suffer through somebody else's negligence. Talk about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. What's more, this is being done based on the flimsiest of unreliable evidence. One asks whether the movers behind these initiatives have ever suffered from the sort of injuries themselves for which damages will be removed, or if somebody close to them has been injured in this way. Would their attitudes be different if they had to live with the consequences? Attacks on the rights of people injured through clinical negligence are equally unacceptable. People do not seek medical help and attention or go into hospital expecting to end up worse off. If that happens through negligence, it's imperative that their rights are protected and that their ability to be rehabilitated and to receive fair compensation is also protected by having access to independent representation by a suitably qualified lawyer who can do the job without their hands tied behind their back. APIL is committed to working with the government and the NHS to find ways in which claims can be dealt with in the most cost-effective manner without compromising in any shape or form the rights of the injured individual. At the same time, the NHS and medical professionals must be prepared to learn from their mistakes and admit to them quickly when they occur. That is not happening, and making it more difficult for personal injury lawyers to do what they do is not going to help injured patients either. So what can you do? The time for action has come. It's time to fight back and not let the undoubted power of the insurance industry or a government concerned purely with the economy triumph over the rights of injured people, rights that have been around for hundreds of years. You must be sitting there in your offices or at home, seething and frustrated. You might be thinking and hoping that APIL and other claimant-based organisations will do what they can, and of course they will. But we must all try to do more and do it now. If the government doesn't care about injured people, let's show that we do. APIL has a fantastic management team and staff working tirelessly behind the scenes, collating data, speaking to people, meeting, writing, calling, researching, learning and making representations all day, every day. Much of the work is unseen because it's sensitive and delicate, but be in no doubt that work is being done. However, to some extent, APIL is only as effective as its membership, and it relies on you. Anecdote is helpful, but not very helpful. Government ministers, civil servants, and even to some extent the media rely on and are persuaded by real-life cases and real statistics. It's often frustrating that when APIL calls for information, case studies and data, it's sometimes sparse in coming forward. There are some notable exceptions, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts to those of you who pitch in to help. So when the requests come, please do take time to respond. We've all been guilty of thinking that someone else will do it, but that doesn't always happen. Keep useful data and case studies, and be sure to feed the information into the APIL office. Have systems in your offices to do so. I want to set up formal arrangements with a number of firms to have an information exchange to improve this going forward. Are you or your firm up for that? Because if so, we want to talk to you. It just takes a bit of thought and planning. Your case studies are also of immense interest to the press and media. Don't hide your light under a bushel. If you have a good outcome for a client, then, with the client's permission, contact the local media to talk about it. You'll be really surprised how interested and grateful, yes, grateful, they will be. One of my colleagues spotlighted IKEA for making an unwarranted allegation of fraud against a client last year, which aroused great press interest with the help of a brave lady who was prepared to speak about how devastated she was. That's fighting back. Despite what insurers would have the world believe, not every case is fraudulent. The APIL office will help you with this. Give them a ring. Wouldn't you rather read about someone who'd taken on an insurance company and won and helped an injured person to rebuild their life than the dreaded ambulance-chasing diatribe? Boy, am I sick of that label. It'll be good for your practice too. It's all part of winning back public confidence and trust in what we do and showing why we are needed and what will be lost if we're no longer around to do this work. And on that point, be aware and become more familiar both with what the Rehabilitation Code can do for all injured clients and what the Serious Injury Guide can achieve in more severe cases. APIL has been heavily involved over many years in building and improving the Rehabilitation Code, and it's an incredibly useful but perhaps still underused tool in the kit of a personal injury lawyer. Last year, we started a campaign to increase awareness amongst our members and the public about the code. This year, we want to take that forward and build on what we've achieved. We need to show the world that actually, personal injury lawyers are there to make a difference to injured people rather than just chase the money. An emphasis on what we can achieve in rehabilitation and showing its importance will help us to do that. The theme of this conference is winning hearts and minds, and that's precisely what we have to do. Help us to show the public, MPs, press, media, and even the judiciary that we really do fulfill a genuine holistic function. Yes, getting money for a client is an important part of it, but it goes far further than that. Starting perhaps with physiotherapy in less serious cases, but right up to spinal cord or brain injury rehabilitation. What we do in helping clients get back to normal, so far as possible, is actually good for the National Health Service by taking pressure off it, good for society, and good for the government. We need to continue to remind the government of the part that we play in recoupment for the Compensation Recovery Unit and the benefit to the public purse, which is also in line with the doctrine of polluter pays. Talk to other people about what we do. Try and educate your doctor friends. How many of them know about the Rehabilitation Code and the fact that it'll take pressure off the NHS? Do they understand the holistic aspects of our role, or have they been taken in by the insurance propaganda? Offer to go and do educational talks to medical and associated professionals. Talk to charities, Citizen Advice Bureau, and local radio. We must make sure that the removal of general damages and increasing the small claims limit do not creep in through the back door on the quiet. There is a real danger of that happening unless we make our voices heard. It's time to fight back. Despite all these challenges, APIL remains totally committed to its objective of being there to lobby and campaign on behalf of injured people, and also as an educational body designed to maintain and raise standards in personal injury work. Under our now immediate past President, Jonathan Wheeler, we've actively pursued campaigns aimed at achieving an increase in damages for bereavement and for psychiatric harm, and to try to have compulsory public liability insurance introduced for businesses. We intend to continue that work, which has certainly gained some traction. I'd like to pay tribute to Jonathan, both for his efforts over many years on behalf of APIL and for his fantastic work on behalf of very many victims of abuse, also over many years and when it was very difficult to do so. Anybody who saw the film Spotlight will know just how important that is. On a similar note, I have a strong personal interest in the criminal injuries compensation scheme. There's some irony that this year, the year of my presidency, sees the 20th anniversary of the introduction of not just the less generous tariff-based schemes, but also the cap on compensation at £500,000. It has not been increased even to take account of inflation, and making an allowance for that alone would bring the figure nearer to £840,000. I've had the privilege of representing many victims of shaken baby syndrome over those years, children who might be blind, doubly incontinent, unable to feed or look after themselves or move around, or who have severe learning, emotional or behavioural difficulties. They often have relatively unimpaired life expectancies. £500,000 does not go very far for those children, or indeed for brain-damaged adults. The irony is that when the government cut the scheme dramatically in 2012, despite opposition from some of its own well-known MPs, it did so with the promise of ensuring that the remaining resources would be directed to the benefit of the most seriously injured. Quite how that fits with dramatically reducing awards for loss of earnings or earning capacity and maintaining the cap on damages is difficult to fathom. The scheme at the moment is under-resourced and run in a dysfunctional fashion, and it's adding insult to injury for victims of crime. It's another example of a government that does not care about injured people and is putting the economy first. I propose to look into launching a campaign that will address these injustices. Going back to our core principles, APIL is determined to remain strongly committed to raising standards in education in personal injury law. Despite the move away from compulsory education by the Solicitors Regulation Authority, we take a different view and are keen to ensure that our members keep right up to date in this ever-changing environment. What's more, we're equally determined to encourage our members, both personally and as firms, to consider and embrace accreditation. A great deal of work has gone into designing our various accreditation schemes in recent years, and we want to encourage as many of you as possible to think about applying to become accredited. This will be good for you, for your firm, and most important, for your injured clients. It will also help us to continue to establish the strength of APIL and recognition of what we do in the public consciousness, much as has happened in other industries. We are the brand for personal injury legal services, and we need to build on that. This will make us all much stronger together, help us in our fight back, and in showing our worth and value. Many of you will have had to study and take examinations for 5 or 6 years to get where you are and to be qualified to represent injured people. We should not be shy about saying that and reminding the powers that be and the public that obtaining just and fair outcomes requires this skill and expertise. And we do need to pull together, now more than ever. We know there are time and business pressures on everyone, but please do try to come along to local APIL group meetings, or either regional groups or special interest groups. Come and exchange ideas and share your thoughts. Let us know what you would like to see happening. Over the years, the emphasis at these meetings has been on educating, and whilst that will continue, we also very much want to make them interactive and intend to ensure that executive committee members or officers are there both to provide information, but also to obtain your feedback about what's important to you and what you want and need. On the same theme, I can't tell you how much we value our association with and the input from our colleagues in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Our regular cross-jurisdictional meetings continue to pay great dividends in terms of intelligence sharing, and I have huge admiration for colleagues in the different jurisdictions who achieve groundbreaking outcomes on behalf of injured clients. We've recently seen a long overdue increase in bereavement damages in Northern Ireland, for example. In Scotland, an apologies bill, which could have set personal injury litigation back decades, was watered down to the point that we no longer need to be concerned about it. We learn so much from one another and our comparative areas, and very long may that continue. Because the future, for all of us, is going to look and be different. The way in which cases are dealt with in a digitised world, where governments do not want us using publicly funded ways of resolving disputes, is going to change, and probably very soon. Although the focus, the headline grabber, seems to have been on smaller and less serious injuries recently, APIL is very much alive to the wider picture. Lord Justice Jackson has made it clear that a regime of fixed costs across the board is his vision, including in all multi-track cases. That carries great potential danger for access to justice, forcing us again to work with our hands tied behind our backs. The government also seems oblivious to the danger of introducing endless changes without waiting for previous reforms to settle down. There'll be more and more of such challenges to meet. I know that I've been to APIL conferences and meetings over these years, these many years, and have often felt inspired and determined to go away and do things and change things. But then everyday life catches up and overtakes me. But now, the future of injured people is dependent on all of us. So get fired up. When you leave this conference, whenever that may be, go back to your offices, determine that this year you're going to do whatever you can personally do to win back some hearts and minds of the doubters and the mudslingers. I want to wish you all an enjoyable couple of days. Please do have some fun, learn as much as you can, and then when you leave, do everything that you can to help with the fight back that innocent, injured people deserve. Thank you.